We begin in the Middle East, where two separate attacks in the space of just 12 hours on the senior leaders of two Iran-backed groups have raised fears of a wider regional conflict. Hamas says its political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed during a visit to Tehran. Early indications suggest that he and his bodyguard died when a rocket hit the house where he was staying. Hamas has accused Israel of being responsible and described the killing as a grave escalation. Well, hours earlier, Israel said it had killed a senior Hezbollah figure in a strike in Beirut. The movement has confirmed that vowed, one of its top military commanders, was in a building targeted by Israel, but hasn't confirmed his fate. Israel said he was responsible for an attack that killed 12 young people in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Well, let's start this hour with this report from Yolanda.
State media in Iran reporting the assassination in its capital of this top Hamas leader. A VIP guest, Ismail Haniyeh had been in Tehran along with the heads of other regional armed groups backed by Iran for the inauguration of the country's new president. But these were to be his last ever public appearances. In Gaza today, news of the killing worried many Palestinians about the implications for ending nearly 10 months of war with Israel.
If the leaders die, the political leaders, where are we going? Children are dying, the elderly are dying, the youth are dying. No one is looking out for us.
I hope this will be the last assassination, and God willing, the war will end after this assassination. We are all tired.
Ismail Haniyeh was from Gaza, but had recently lived in Qatar. He was seen as more pragmatic than hardline Hamas leaders still in the Palestinian territory, and had been overseeing talks on a ceasefire and the release of Israeli hostages. Now hostage families fear a setback.
I don't know how this news affects the deal, but I really wish for all of the forces around the world that will gather in order to bring our people back home. I hope our politicians will know to make this news into the release of the hostages.
Just hours before the Tehran attack, Israel had targeted a senior Hezbollah commander in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. It said he was responsible for a deadly rocket strike in the occupied Golan Heights last weekend. Fears were already running high about the possibility of retaliation and a wider war. Now, with Iran announcing 3 days of mourning for Ismail Haniyeh and vowing a harsh and painful response, the Middle East is even more on edge. Yolanda Nell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, our correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher is in Jerusalem. Now, Israel never comments on these types of assassinations, and I asked her whether this time was any different.
Not so far, no. And again, in the most recent briefing with the Prime Minister's office, the spokesperson was asked, and he said we're not commenting on this incident. But we do know that after the October 7th attacks, which were led by Hamas, the Israeli government had said that they were going to target all of the Hamas leadership, including the political leadership. So they have kept that threat current throughout the past 10 months. And there was a strike against a political leader, the deputy political leader in Beirut in January. So I think the entire region and probably most other people do believe it was the Israelis who carried it out. There was a brief moment on social media when a picture of Ismail Haniyeh was posted by the government press office here with a graphic saying on his graphic across his face saying eliminated, but that was taken down very quickly. So clearly the Israelis don't want to own this publicly. But as I said, they had been saying that they would be targeting the leadership. The question really is now why they would take this particular opportunity, especially when Mr. Haniyeh had been very heavily involved in ceasefire talks that many were hoping would result in at least a pause in the conflict in Gaza.
Yes, there is that obvious question about why now and the implications on exactly what you've just mentioned. But is anything being reported about how exactly this attack was done?
Yeah, we don't know exactly how it was done. We do know that it took place at 2 o'clock in the morning, according to Iranian media, and also that it was very precise because there were other Hamas leaders in the building, as well as a leader of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and they were not hit. It was very much aimed, it seems, at Ismail Haniyeh, which means that the Israelis had very good intelligence about where he was. Perhaps because he was attending an event that had been pre-organized, the inauguration of the Iranian president, so maybe they had time to get intelligence on it. The Iranian media initially reported that it was a missile fired from outside the country, but there have been other reports saying that it was a rocket fired from a nearby building, which would implicate, which would suggest there was some inside help for the attack. But we don't have any confirmation of exactly how it was carried out.
That was Barbara Player-Telschow. Let's speak live now to General Amir Avivi, who's the founder of the Israel Defence and Security Forum. General, welcome here to the programme. What is Israel's strategy here?
Well, Israel's strategy, I think, from day one is very, very clear. There is a clear goal of war to eradicate Hamas as a military entity and governmental entity. Hamas has attacked, unprovoked, killed 1,200 Israelis, raped women, decapitated head of children, took hostages, burned people alive. And this organization cannot exist anymore, not in our region at least. And step by step, the IDF is destroying Hamas militarily and also targeting the leadership of Hamas, which are all vicious terrorists.
Do you think it brings peace any closer, because the region has been on the brink for a very long time, taking out Haniyeh there on Iranian territory, killing a senior Hezbollah leader in Beirut? There is that real risk of this tipping over into a wider war, isn't there?
We are in war, and in war you need to first win decisively and then talk about peace, just as
but not a wider war. That is what the Americans have been warning against. Various allies have been warning against a wider conflict. Does this edge us closer to that wider conflict?
Well, I think that, and I've been saying that for the last 2 years to the American administration, and I'm saying it also to the British government. If you want to stabilize the Middle East, you need to show strength. You need to pose a credible military threat on Iran. You need deterrence. We have a globe, not just the region, the whole globe is completely destabilized.
So the Americans are wrong when they keep urging Israel's Prime Minister not to escalate it. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that Israel needs to win decisively on all fronts. The Americans are wrong if they think that appeasement works with Iranians, with this terrible regime. They are wrong if they think appeasement works with the Hezbollah. It's not going to work. We need strength. We need to win decisively. And after we'll win, we can talk about solutions and peace agreements and so on. Peace agreements will come in the Middle East following a decisive win of Israel. Then we might see peace with Saudi Arabia. We might see maybe an alliance, a coalition.
Well, that's many stages. That's many stages ahead. I just want to ask you about the immediate. Do you think this brings any closer the release of those hostages?
I think that only really a military pressure is going to bring the leadership of Hamas to the point where they agree to a deal. They have rejected everything that was offered for months and months. They don't show any willingness to release hostages, and the Chief of Staff of Israel, the Minister of Defense, the Prime Minister, they're all saying the same. Military pressure, this is what will bring us the hostages. By the way, this is what brought us the hostages at the beginning, when we put a lot of military pressure.
Sure, but you've also been sending teams to negotiate, and he was the principal negotiator.
Sorry, can you ask again?
I was saying Israel, been sending teams to negotiate in Qatar, and he was Hamas's principal negotiator. Who is there now left to negotiate with?
Well, they say they have Khaled Mashal, which they can send. They always have somebody to replace, but the leading leadership will be targeted, eventually all of them. Also Sinwar, which is hiding somewhere in the Rafah region, maybe Khan Yunis, and the IDF is seeking to find them. I think that the Palestinian society are fed up of Hamas. I'm hoping that they will understand they have no future with a terror organization, terrorizing them, using them as human shields, and taking them their food from all the food that is coming from Gaza. I think it's time to get rid of this organization.
General, we have to leave it there, but thanks for that perspective joining us here on BBC News.